Finding a rare bird is like winning the lottery. We play this game over and over, and every so often lightning strikes or that Powerball hits to keep the lottery metaphor going. But what do you do when you find a rare bird? Celebrate, of course, but your next steps in documenting and reporting can be critical to if that bird gets accepted or not. I'm Doug Hitchcox. My goal is to get the most people to see the most birds, and in this video, I'm going to give you some advice on what you should do if you find a rare bird. I'm going to cover some of the recommendations on how to document your sightings, how to quickly get the word out, and what you can do on the scene to help out. Your first task after finding a rare bird is to document it. Of course, you can do nothing, watch it by yourself, tell no one, and the world will go on with no knowledge of whatever happened. But since you're watching this video, I think you are in the majority of birders that want to share an observation. I like to think of this in terms of the old expression, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, did it make a noise? Same idea, like if you find a rare bird but don't tell anyone, does it matter? By documenting the birds we see, we are able to expand our knowledge of how bird populations are changing, how they're reacting to environmental stressors, or if it's just another mind-blowing, completely unexpected occurrence that may never happen again. So one of my favorite bits of advice is to shoot first and ask questions later. As soon as you see something unusual, start recording it. You never know how long a bird is going to stick around. It could take off in a few seconds and never be seen again. Even if you think you're too far away, snapping a quick photo, even if it's just to get a few pixels, can really help prove what you were seeing. I think a lot of people underestimate the capabilities of their cameras, as a surprisingly common comment on eBird checklists of unusual birds is that it was, quote, too distant for a photo. I can think of a couple fun examples where the spray and pray method worked pretty well. In September 2011, we were on Maine Audubon's pelagic trip and motored out to Machias Seal Island. You may know this site as one of the only places in the lower 48 states that you can land on the island and sit amongst puffins. Calling it in the lower 48 is a bit of a stretch because it's actually disputed territory. While Canada does fly a flag on it right now, the island does count as being in the US on eBird, so I think you know how we count it. So on this trip, our large boat could only get within 500 to 600 feet of shore, putting us closer to 1,000 feet from any of the grassy area on the island. And on that trip, Luke Seitz and Robbie Lambert were scanning the island for passerines. We can usually pick up some sparrows or other migrants stopping over, and they notice a bird perched up on a post of the island. Luke snapped away and caught the bird as it hopped off the perch, revealing a white tail and rump of a northern wheat ear. This is a great rarity from Maine and only shows up every few years. I already told you the vermilion flycatcher story in my rare bird alerts video, but that's a fun one to think about because we know exact measurements. Looking at Google Earth, we were standing on the edge of this parking lot, looking at the bird on the roof of this building. That is a bird that is just under 6 inches long, viewed from about 1,250 feet away, and snapping photos, we were still able to get a few pixels. It does help that it was a bright red bird, but I'd argue that these photos are just meant to supplement the report that would come with it. Along with not being intimidated by distance, I think people get too reliant on their cameras to take photos for them. So one skill I recommend any photographers try practicing is manually focusing. This will save you when it comes to species moving through dense brush or in darkly lit areas where the cameras are going to struggle to focus because of the lack of contrast. I'll show you a couple examples of my worst photos of the best birds, all documenting what I saw, but only because I could manually focus. As soon as I saw the bird was mostly sharp, I just fired away. Here's my first Connecticut warbler in Maine, one of the only chaseable records. I spent most of the day in this one dense hemlock. And this is a Kentucky warbler, similar scenario where it just stayed in this dense, dark area. Or for an ABA rarity, folks might remember the Key West quail doves that spent several months back in 2014-15 at Long Key State Park in Florida. There's at least a pair here that would sometimes come out into the paths, typically first thing in the morning, but as soon as the first people got there, the birds would flush into dense cover for the day. My dad and I drove from Cocoa Beach down to Long Key and missed it by a few minutes because it was flushed by campers in the park. If one 6-hour drive one way isn't fun enough, we tried again the next morning. Long story short, we finally got to see them as they shuffled deep into the mangroves, and I got this stunning photo. The last thing I'll say in this just take a photo section is to use whatever you've got. No telephoto lens, fine. Try digiscoping with a cell phone. If your hands are too wobbly, just zoom in on your phone. Honestly, the sensors in our phones are better than many of the DSLRs we are still carrying around nowadays. One record I'll share is an amazing find by Trevor Persons of Maine's first Kirtland's warbler at Kennebunk Plains back in 2008. Trevor was there conducting snake research. This is one of the only places in Maine with black racers, and he recognized the song of Kirtland's warbler in some pitch pines. Now, Trevor was there studying snakes, and the only camera he had on him was a film camera with a 50mm macro lens. But to his credit, he still tried taking a photo, and sure enough, there was enough detail in those slides that you can clearly see the bird. And of course, not everyone has a camera or will have it on them when a rare bird comes around. And I can't tell you the number of times I've been out and realized that I forgot a memory card or the only battery I had on me was dead. Now, these are the scenarios where the lost art of writing field notes is critical. I say this is a lost art mostly from the perspective of an eBird reviewer, where people are asked to specifically describe a bird, its relevant field marks, and how similar species were eliminated, and instead we just get comments like, "It was sitting in a tree." And I know a lot of people think that photos are required for a report of a rare bird getting accepted nowadays, but that just isn't true. We are lucky that most birds, even if not photographed by the original finder, do get documented pretty quickly, but there are occasional examples to the contrary. A noteworthy record I'll quickly mention here was a first state record, which I would say has the highest threshold to clear for acceptance. When there's a long established pattern of occurrence, we can fit these pieces into the puzzle easier. But when you've picked up that first piece, you might not even know which way is up, especially when you can't see the image. So this was a site-only record of a rock wren in Maine from 29 October 2013 in Trescott. I'll read a bit from the Maine Bird Records Committee report, then we can talk about what some of the key takeaways should be. The bird was seen by Tom and Pat Cabe. Their report reads, quote, "Pat and I walked to Bog Brook Cove, and about 4:30 Pat spotted a wren on the rocks above the beach. We had seen rock wrens in Arizona and New Mexico. We thought about a Buick's too, but we were not familiar enough with either to make a call, hence the field notes." And here's the bit of gold here. Scanned copies of their notes taken in the field. I'll spare you with the complete read, but they note relevant field marks, behavior. They also note that, quote, "we were able to watch for a considerable period of time." That's great. And they note that it was when they got back that they checked against their Sibley guide. We'll dissect this in a minute, but I'll mention that the MEBRC did take multiple rounds of voting. Again, rightfully so, as the bar is so high, but this was accepted unanimously as the first state record. So let's use this as a case study, and I'll mention a few more tips as we go, but what was done right? First, it is really important to write down what you saw immediately. There are plenty of examples and studies about how bad our memory is, much of this coming from examples of eyewitness testimony, which has basically been proven to be worthless. A famous study, though proven to be flawed, was by Patrick Bartlett and revolved around a story called War of Ghosts. I won't go into the whole study, but basically Bartlett took 20 people, admittedly too small of a sample size, and gave them a story, again called The War of the Ghosts, that they were allowed to read twice. They weren't told this was a study about reconstructive memory, but that was Bartlett's goal. And so he asked them to recall or retell the story 15 minutes later. And what is really fascinating is he asked them many times later, as short as a day and as long as 10 years later. Bartlett found that participants changed the story when asked to retell it. They changed parts and would often pull from their own experience or vocab. This is called transformation due to familiarization. There were also parts of the story that they changed to make more sense to them, which we call transformation due to rationalization. The reason for these transformations was from what cognitive scientists call schemas. In cognitive science, a schema is like a mental framework or blueprint that helps us organize and understand information. Think of it like a filing system in your brain. When you experience something new, your brain tries to fit the experience into one of these mental files based on what you already know. For example, if you have a schema for a restaurant, you expect to see tables, menus, and people ordering food. When you walk into a new restaurant, you instantly know what's going on because it matches your restaurant schema. If something unusual happens, like the restaurant doesn't have menus, you need to update or adjust your schema to make sense of it. Schemas help us make sense of the world quickly and can sometimes lead to misunderstandings if our mental framework doesn't match reality. So we should be aware of what schemas we have in terms of what birds we're going to see in what places. This is a really long explanation to get a point across that we, not just as birders, but as thinking humans, really shouldn't trust our memory, especially for finer details that don't match our schemas. So write your notes about a rare bird as soon as you possibly can, ideally while you're still observing it. My next bit of advice, and this might sound counterintuitive, is but do not use a reference. It is best to get all your notes down before you start flipping through your field guide. This is especially true if a bird has already gone, because you don't want to bias your interpretation of what you saw. For example, think about like a Myarchus flycatcher. Like, what color was the underside of that flycatcher? Yellowish? How far up the chest did it extend? Was it more than halfway? Write down what you actually saw, because as soon as you see a picture or notes in your field guide, it's too easy to think like, oh right, that is what it looked like. Okay, next, if not using a reference material sounds counterintuitive, you're going to love this next piece of advice. Use a reference material. But again, this is only after you've gotten all your notes down. Then check them against the field guides or send them to someone to get their advice. You should hopefully be able to eliminate species until you have your one answer. You should not be trying to convince yourself of something you saw to get to an answer. After documenting the bird, reporting it is the next critical step. I'll pause here to acknowledge, as I did earlier, that not every bird is going to be chaseable to everyone. Or you may need to talk to landowners before you can report it, but if you want to get into the nuance of those discussions, I recommend you watch my Why Birding Needs Gatekeepers video. For this discussion, get the word out quickly. We never know how long a bird is going to stick around. Some birds are one-day wonders, while others might linger for weeks. The goal, at least as I see it, should be to get the report out quickly to give the most people the chance to get there and see it. Even if they can't drop everything, at least the planning stages can start. You know, when you can use the afternoon to start developing that cough so that it seems a little bit more natural when you call in sick the next day out of work. One more thing I want to address here is getting the word out widely. We have this huge problem in birding in 2024 that there are too many places for rare bird alerts to be posted. This is the paradox of progress I get into in my bird alerts are getting better and worse video. But of all the choices you have, try to go with the one that's going to be most relevant to the situation. Most states will have a statewide rare bird alert, but it is always good to be aware of what they consider rare. I've tried to keep that bar low in Maine, encouraging people to report birds that would be of interest to most people, while other states only allow birds that are on the state's Bird Records Committee review list. That seems way too restrictive to me, but either way, if you aren't sure, just go ahead and post it. Admins will hopefully politely tell you that it wasn't appropriate, and at least now people will know. If you aren't signed up for any of the local RBAs, using eBird is always a good option. That said, most people aren't signed up for hourly alerts, and honestly, sometimes that first hour or two are really critical in seeing the bird. Or if you keep birding and don't submit your list for a while, then those alerts are going to be even further delayed. A good backup is to look up a local business or organization that can help out. There are probably an Audubon Society or bird observatory in the region, or even a wild bird feeding store locally, one of which should have someone around that is connected to the birding community can help get the word out. The last thing I'll say on this topic is I know how anxiety-inducing it can be to report a rare bird, especially if you aren't 100% sure, but know that other birders may be able to help figure it out. It can be stressful to put an alert out. Maybe you can just tell a little white lie if that helps. Post something like, I'm passing along a report of a possible stellar sea eagle. And then if you're wrong, you can write it off as, well, I was just trying to get the word out quickly. Because no one will fault you for that. Sitting on a report for a day or two is brutal, as I often tell people on bird walks I lead and encouraging them to point out birds that they see first. I say, it's better to be fast and wrong than let something good get away. The last topic I want to cover, piece of advice I want to give, if you found a rare bird, document it, report it, then hang around and help out other birders. You'll have the most information on where it's been going, what it's been feeding on, when was the last time you saw it, or how often it goes out of sight for. This is all super valuable information for those looking in the field, and probably not all of this is going to end up shared in those bird alerts. Yes, again, we'll acknowledge every scenario is different. You'd have a life and probably can't spend endless hours helping people, but I always try to pass off the bird to the next birders to arrive, then hopefully they can do the same. If I can share one of my biggest gripes about birders at stakeouts, and if you've made it this long into the video, then I hope I'm in a safe place, but it's about those people who aren't paying attention. It is so frustrating to show up to a rarity with a bunch of birders there. No one knows where the bird is. Sure, birds move around a lot and might not always be visible, but when you're left with the explanation that no one saw where it went, or people say that it flew off and can't even tell you which direction, it just kind of feels like we've lost what we're up to. Okay, that rant aside, I'll end on a happier encouragement that I think being able to share a rare bird is one of the best feelings in birding. I'll always remember this situation I was in a few years ago. I got to spend an entire fall birding out on Monhegan Island. This is a great rarity trap in the Gulf of Maine, but much of the island shuts down by early October. I was able to be out there through November and into the true rarity season. I found a handful of rare birds, including Virginia's warbler. There were only 3 records in New England at the time, amazingly all from Monhegan, and I just remember that kind of empty feeling of not being able to share it with anyone. Sure, I posted about it on the listserv that evening, but with a limited boat schedule, there was really no way that anyone could chase it. This really made me realize just how much fun it is to have other people be able to share in the sightings that we find. I'm sure some of this might seem obvious, but there are a number of things that we do that make us really bad witnesses. And certainly, we know that we're unconsciously changing or transforming what we observe, be it through familiarization or rationalization. Come to think of it, can you remember the name of the story in Bartlett's study? That was just a few minutes ago, after all. Anyways, go watch those videos on the paradox of progress and why birding needs gatekeepers, and make sure you're subscribed and hit that like button to help me with my goal of getting the most people to see the most birds. Thanks for watching.